version control is one of those things I can't even think about living without as a developer. Now, I'm old. I predate version control. I certainly predate Git. But I remember a time before I used version control. And anyways, it is so nice to have. I can see what files changed, who changed them, things like that. But today, I want to talk about a problem, which is what about those files that we specifically tell Git not to track? How could we see changes that happen in there? Well, there is a way to do it, not with Git, but with my editor. I use PhpStorm. So I'm going to show you a demo and kind of set up a scenario where this is actually a useful thing. So let's take a look at the code. So here we go, .env. This is definitely a file we do not want tracked in version control. We do not want this to be part of our repo. And don't get excited. These are all fake things. You're not going to get any like API keys as I scroll around here. But anyways, this is just an env file, excluded by default when you Laravel new a project. But let's just say, like, what if I change something in here? I don't know. It doesn't really matter. Like if I change this to MySQL, it doesn't matter. But the point is, let's say I made this change. How would I know? How could I see a version history of that change? Well, in PhpStorm, under File, there's local history. This is something that PhpStorm tracks all on its own, has nothing to do with Git. So if I say show history for the file that's open, it shows the change. And it keeps track of this over time. Now it's local to my project, which is local to this machine. It's actually stored in like the .idea folder, like buried somewhere deep in your user folder. But anyways, it does track these changes. And so over time, if I've been working in a project, in fact, if you have a project in PhpStorm, check your .env, look at local history, you'll probably see all the changes you ever made to it. So that is super useful when you need to see those changes. Now, in this case, I just made a change. I know what I changed. Like, it's not that big a deal. But let's look at another scenario where it really is useful to see it. So let's say I have a project that uses Laravel Vapor. Again, these are fake things. Don't get excited and try to steal all these keys here. But this file represents the .env in my production environment. And so I have a command which simulates, this isn't actually hooked up to Vapor, but just for the purpose of this demo, that simulates when you're using Vapor and you want to pull down the latest production, because maybe you pulled it down yesterday and one of your teammates changed something in between. So you do this, and what it does is it pulls down that file, it overwrites it, but like you're left with this question, what actually changed? I mean, unless you have a really good memory or you save like your own separate copy of the file, it's hard to just look at this and see what changed. But again, let's use this local history feature. I think click fast enough, local history, show history. Here it is. So this is showing warning to error. This DB cluster changed, this password changed, some new thing was added. So this is very useful in the scenario where even an external tool like Vapor is changing files on disk. If it's happening while PhpStorm is open, PhpStorm is tracking that through its local history, and that's now available for me to see what changed. So it's a small quality of life improvement. It's not something I use very frequently, but it's nice to know that it's there. Hopefully you'll find it useful as well.